The death penalty is also known as capital punishment. It started in 18th century BC over in Europe, and around 1608 is when the Europeans brought it over to the Americas. And they used to do the death penalty for lying, killing, stealing, anything you could think about. They would just use the death penalty to solve it. And the ways in which they killed people were not humane. It was things from drowning to hanging people to shooting them to beating them to death. Anything like that is just has no place in society, really. And the main points I'm going to talk about today as to why I believe that there should be no death penalty in the U.S., there's no room for it, are cost. It doesn't deter criminals. It is absolutely inhumane, and you can't always guarantee that you have the right person. You could be putting someone completely not guilty on that chair to die, and imagine how their family would feel. It's just bad. So my original point, the death penalty is very expensive. It is estimated that the death penalty, according to the California Commission of Fair Administration of Justice, it costs roughly $137 million per year, and with the current system adjustments that are going to be put in place, that would jump up to $232 million per year, and that's over $100 million. And then, according to the same site, if we didn't do that, we didn't do the death penalty or anything like that, that number would drop, that cost would drop by roughly 20 times, and we would go down to around 11.2 million just to house these criminals, and that would overall be better. As well as, if we put so much money into the death penalty, we could take that money out and put it into things like drugs, stopping other crimes. Not things that I guess can be solved in other ways, but these things can't really be solved in other ways, unlike putting someone that would be on the death penalty in a prison. And in Kansas, they spend roughly 50% more on the death penalty than other things. And now to my second point about the higher crime rates, how it doesn't have higher crime rates in those states that have it. That's actually false. There is no correlation, and you may think that's very odd, but in some years, the murder rate in states with the death penalty was over 40% higher than those that did not have the death penalty. That's pretty absurd if you ask me, and that was all from deathpenaltyinfo.org. And according to an article on this site as well, states without the death penalty have lower homicide rates than states with the death penalty. The Times reports that 10 of the 12 states without the death penalty have homicide rates below the national average, whereas half the states with the death penalty have homicide rates above. During the last 20 years, homicide rates in the states with the death penalty has been 48% to 100% higher than in states without the death penalty. And another writer on the site that they interviewed John Egler, a Republican out of Michigan, and he said, I think Michigan made a wise decision 150 years ago when they abolished the death penalty because, again, like he said, it doesn't do anything with the murder. There's a cost. It doesn't deter the crime rates. And they're proud of it. They're proud to not have the death penalty, and I think every other state should do that as well. And the average murder rate in states with the death penalty is 5.5, and states without the death penalty is 3.6. So that's a 2% difference, really. A 2% rate of a difference, according to deathpenalty.org. And now, some people might look at the death penalty as sort of like a revenge, or a way to get revenge, sort of like the old saying, an eye for an eye, something like that. And however, killing, it's not humane. No matter what way you look at it, even in war, it's not humane, it's not the right thing, but sometimes in a situation like that, you might have to, okay? But when you can lock them up and not do stuff like that, there's always the better way. But in a post written by Hugo Adam Badeau on alcu.org, the death penalty inherently violates the constitutional ban against cruel and unusual punishment and then guarantees of due process of law and of equal protection under the law. So basically, what it's saying is the death penalty does not line up with the constitutional values that our founding fathers set up when the Constitution was put in place and our original presidents and everything like that. They were looking at the much bigger picture, and this is kind of like a way kind of wormed into the system that some people believe is okay, but a majority of people kind of don't really think is okay. And the death penalty can rely on a variety of things. It can go from the skill of the attorney to the race of the victim and the place of the crime. Black people have a higher rate in the death penalty than white people. If you have a good attorney, you're less likely to get the death penalty, all that stuff. So what makes a one-person murder of a no-class person different than a one-person murder of a celebrity, and one gets the one of those murders gets the death penalty and one doesn't? It just doesn't make much sense. And according to Bidau, in 2002, the Supreme Court held executions of mentally retarded criminals are cruel and unusual punishments prohibited by the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution. Since then, states have developed a range of processes to ensure that mentally retarded individuals are not executed. And in that, yeah, they're different, but still, it's still killing someone, so you can't really change that. It needs to be equal for everyone. And that means that a 17-year-old male could murder 1,000 people, and all they would get is a life sentence. Here's my response to that. Put him in prison and make him work hard. Don't kill him. Don't put him on the death penalty. Not to the point of slavery or close to that. I'm sure there's zero way to be forgiven what happened. But saving money by not putting him on the death penalty and making him work hours and hours for the rest of their life is better for society, and it's not as big of a downfall, you would say. Lastly, with the death penalty, you can never know with 100% certainty that you have the right person. We need, it just costs too much and everything like that. We need better lawyers, everything like that. And according to NCADP.org, 1 out of every 10 people that were on the death penalty were guilty. Now, like I said, with the cost, the inhumaneness, everything like that, overall, it is just not a good thing. And dating back, our ancestors, we don't want that. We don't want to be killing for a bunch of useless stuff like that. So it's just not a good place.